I stood in front of the large glass doors of the upscale restaurant where my father, Richard, was celebrating his 60th birthday. The warm, golden light spilled from inside, reflecting on the glass, creating a blurred image of myself. A 31-year-old woman in an elegant dress, yet feeling like she didn't belong here. I had hesitated for a long time before coming. If it weren't for my aunt, the only person in the family who truly cared about me, I would never have stepped foot into this party. She had called me last week, gently urging, "Lana, he's still your father. At least stop by and say hello, and if it doesn't feel right, you can leave." So here I was, knowing full well that in this party, I was nothing more than an outsider. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Soft music from a live band in the corner played through the air, blending with the lively chatter of hundreds of guests. Just as I expected, my father had thrown a grand party, not just to celebrate his birthday, but to reinforce his status in the business world. I walked toward the check-in table, where a neat row of name tags had been carefully arranged. I skimmed through the familiar names: Uncle Peter, Cousin Emily, family friend, Mark. But when I found mine, I froze. The small tag in front of me didn't just have Lana written on it. Beneath it, in delicate handwriting, 2 words had been added. Garden. For a moment, I thought I had misread it. I blinked, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, a soft yet unmistakably mocking laugh rang out. I turned around and, unsurprisingly, the person standing there was Margaret, my stepmother, holding a glass of red wine, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "Oh dear, Lana, you look so tense. It's just a joke," she chuckled, the triumph in her gaze unmistakable. "A joke?" I clenched the name tag in my hand. Maybe to her it was just a joke, but to me, it was a cruel reminder that I had never truly belonged in this family. My parents divorced when I was 9. At the time, I didn't fully understand what it meant, only that from then on, my father no longer came home every night, and family dinners were just me and my mother. At first, he still cared about me. He took me to the park on weekends, occasionally called to ask about my schoolwork. But just a year later, he remarried, a refined, sharp-witted woman with 2 children of her own, Max and Olivia. From that moment, everything changed. At first, I tried to fit in. I was just a kid, and I wanted my father to be happy. I had hoped that we could be a real family, that I would still have a place in his life. But I was wrong. The changes started subtly. My father became busier with his new family. He forgot about our outings, but never missed Olivia's ballet performances or Max's soccer games. Then it became more obvious. Family dinners turned into reminders that I was an afterthought. Max and Olivia were doted on, while I was pushed further to the margins. I was given chores they never had to do. If Olivia spilled something, I was expected to clean it up. If Max didn't feel like washing the dishes, I was the one called to do it instead. And if I ever complained? "Lana, you're older. Be mature," my father would sigh as if I exhausted him. Margaret, on the other hand, didn't bother with subtlety. She would simply smirk and say, "You're such a selfish child." But the final straw came when I was 17. My mother, despite not having much, had saved every penny to open a college fund for me. It was money she hoped would help me afford school without worrying too much. Then one day I checked the account. It was empty. I didn't understand what had happened until I overheard a conversation between my father and Margaret. "Richard, we have to pay Olivia's tuition. If we don't send it soon, she'll lose her spot at the academy." Margaret's voice was calm but firm. "I know. But that's Lana's money. Lana can go to a public school. She doesn't need an expensive education like Olivia. Besides, she's not particularly talented anyway." My father was silent for a long time. Then I heard him sigh. "All right." And just like that, every cent my mother had worked so hard to save for me was spent on Margaret's daughter. I confronted him. I yelled, demanding to know why. He just looked at me, his eyes weary. "I'll make it up to you someday." But someday never came. After that day, I barely spoke to my father. The moment I turned 18, I left home, earned scholarships, and worked to pay for college. I only attended family events when my aunt insisted. I thought that, after all these years, maybe things had changed. But now, standing in the middle of my father's extravagant party, holding a name tag that read Burden, I realized something. Nothing had changed at all. Margaret was still Margaret. My father was still the man who never stood up for me. And in their eyes, I was still an outsider. I slowly placed the name tag back on the table. This time, I wouldn't stay silent. Margaret was still standing there, taking a sip of her wine as if her little joke was nothing of importance. In that moment, memories of being overlooked flooded back like a tidal wave. I remembered the holidays during college when I walked through the front door, only to realize I had no place there. My mother had tried to fight for my stolen tuition money, but my father had better lawyers, more power, and in the end, she lost. I still remember the day she came home from court, her frail shoulders trembling as she said, "I'm so sorry, Lana. I tried my best." I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I knew crying wouldn't change anything. Instead, I threw myself into my studies, working multiple jobs to support myself. I waited tables at a cafe, entered data for a small company at night, and sometimes wrote freelance articles for a news website just to make ends meet. Throughout 4 years of college, I never asked my father for a single cent, and he never once offered. When I went home for the holidays, nothing had changed. Margaret still played the role of the perfect wife. Max and Olivia were still the golden children, showered with attention, while I sat at the dinner table like a guest. I could feel my father's reluctance every time he looked at me. I saw the way he avoided my gaze whenever Margaret mentioned Olivia's study abroad expenses. Expenses that my father gladly covered, while I struggled to pay tuition on my own. Eventually, I stopped trying. I stopped coming home for the holidays. I declined invitations that felt more like obligations than genuine gestures. I stopped waiting for my father to change. But no matter how far I distanced myself, Margaret always found a way to remind me that I would never escape her disdain. And today, at this extravagant party, she did it again. I took a slow, deep breath, a faint smile curling at my lips as I turned to meet Margaret's gaze. "You really are careful, aren't you?" I said, my voice so calm that even I was surprised. "Have you figured out how you're going to explain this to my father yet?" Margaret hesitated for a split second, but then she recovered, smiling as if I were just a child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, Lana, you're always so sensitive. It was just a joke. Everyone knows that." "Really?" I arched an eyebrow. "So, if I tell everyone that you wrote this, do you think they'll find it funny too?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Margaret's face, but she quickly masked it. "Lana, you're overreacting. This is your father's birthday. Don't ruin his night." I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "You're worried I'll ruin his night? Maybe you should have thought of that before trying to make me the punchline of your joke." Before Margaret could respond, I picked up a glass of champagne from the table and strode toward the center of the room, where my father stood surrounded by his esteemed guests. Laughter and conversation filled the air. Max was bragging about his new job, one I was sure he had gotten through my father's influence. Olivia, as usual, was gushing about her upcoming lavish wedding, which I had heard was mostly funded by my father. I stood there for a moment, watching my father, the man I once admired, the man who had been my entire world when I was a child, but now felt like a stranger. He noticed me, his eyes slightly widening, as if he had forgotten I was even here. "Lana," he spoke, looking slightly uneasy. "I didn't think you would come." I gave a small smile. "Neither did I." I saw Olivia and Max exchange glances before looking toward Margaret, who stood behind them, trying to mask her discomfort. "Everyone seems to be having a great time," I said, swirling the champagne in my glass. "I suppose you're happy too, seeing everything go exactly as planned?" My father took a sip of his drink, as if carefully choosing his words. "Can we talk later, Lana? This isn't the time." "Oh, but I think this is the perfect time." I interrupted, my voice calm but deliberate. I slowly raised my champagne glass, gently tapping my fingernail against the rim, creating a soft clink. A few people nearby turned to look at me. I smiled. I'd like to make a toast to my father. I saw my father's smile falter slightly, while Margaret narrowed her eyes in suspicion. To my father, for having the perfect party, the perfect life, the perfect family, I said, my voice light but tinged with irony. And to him, for teaching me a very valuable lesson. I paused for a moment, letting my words linger in the air. I think you've had a bit too much to drink, Margaret interjected, her smile still fixed in place, but I caught the sharp glint of caution in her eyes. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of my presence settle over the room. My father looked as though he wanted to stop me, but he also knew that anything he said now would only make things worse. I'm completely sober. I lifted my champagne glass again, slowly scanning the room. But maybe some people here just aren't comfortable hearing the truth. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, inching away as if not wanting to get caught up in whatever was unfolding. Max crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips, clearly entertained, while Olivia sighed, tapping her fingernail lightly against her glass. In fact, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude, I continued, my voice steady and controlled. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Margaret, for teaching me one of the most important lessons of my life. A lesson I will never forget. My father frowned slightly. Lana, this isn't... I raised my hand slightly, cutting him off with a polite smile. It's okay, Dad, just a simple thank you speech. Margaret took another sip of her wine, still keeping her composed facade, but I noticed her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. Thank you, Dad, for showing me that some people only love you when you fit the role they've assigned to you. When you're obedient, silent, willing to stand in the background and not disturb their perfect little world. I turned to look directly at Margaret. And thank you for always reminding me that, in this family, I was never truly meant to belong. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some guests exchanged glances, clearly uneasy. But most importantly, I said, placing my glass gently on the table, thank you for helping me realize that I don't need anyone's approval here to know my own worth. The room was utterly silent. I met my father's gaze, then Margaret's, then Max's and Olivia's. So, I lifted my glass again, smiling faintly. Here's to the last time any of you will ever see me. And with that, I downed my champagne, set the glass down, turned on my heel, and walked out of the party. No one said anything, no one stopped me. I stepped through the doors, out into the parking lot, inhaling deeply. The cool night air was crisp, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. My phone started buzzing nonstop the moment I got home. Texts, calls, all from my family. My father had called 3 times, Margaret twice, and even Olivia had sent a short, irritated message. What the hell did you just do? I set my phone down on the table, not bothering to reply. My voicemail was flooded with long messages, mostly from my father. Lana, you can't just do this. This is your family. We need to stick together. We have to be there for each other. I stared at the screen, unwilling to listen any further. We weren't a family. A real family wouldn't treat me like an outsider in my own home. Only one message made me pause. Are you okay, Lena? It was from my aunt, the only person in my family who had ever been on my side. I picked up my phone, hesitated for a moment, then typed back, I'm better than ever. In the weeks that followed, I didn't attend any family events. No Livia's wedding, no my father's anniversary, no parties hosted by Margaret. Everything seemed to settle down, but I knew they were still waiting for me to come back. They thought I would soften, that I would apologize for overreacting. But I didn't. I started focusing on my own life. I traveled, met people who truly valued me. I built my career without any help from my family, and most importantly, I was no longer haunted by the need to earn my father's approval. One day, I received a letter from my father. Lana, I truly hope you reconsider. I don't want our family to be broken. Come home and talk. No matter how upset you are, we are still family." I folded the letter and placed it on the table without reading it a second time. My eyes skimmed over the neatly written words, but they didn't stir any emotion. No pain, no disappointment, no longing for validation that I had spent years chasing. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden hue over the rooftops, painting the world in a soft amber glow. I took a deep breath, embracing the stillness of my apartment. A few months ago, if I'd received a letter like this, I probably would have responded immediately, called to ask what he really wanted, wondered if there was a chance to mend things. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. Did I do the right thing? Was cutting ties with my father and his family too extreme? I never wanted to be cruel. I never imagined that one day I would completely walk away from my father's life like this. But I also never wanted to continue being seen as a burden. An outsider in my own family. I had always hoped that one day my father would see me differently, that he would realize I wasn't difficult, I wasn't a troublemaker. I was just a person with value, a person with a life of my own. But maybe that hope was never real. I stood up and poured myself a cup of hot tea. Wrapping my hands around the warm mug, I reminded myself that I didn't have to respond to the letter right away. I could wait, think it through, and decide when I truly wanted to. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I had embarrassed my father in front of his friends and family. Maybe I had hurt him in a way I couldn't take back. But maybe this was what I should have done a long time ago. I had spent my entire youth trying to earn my father's acceptance. I had sacrificed my own feelings, ignored countless times when I was overlooked, endured the blatant favoritism without ever fighting back, just to hope that one day he would finally see me as his daughter. But the truth was, I had never truly belonged in that family, and his birthday party was merely the final push, a reminder that no matter what I did, I would always be an afterthought in their world. I took a sip of my tea, feeling the warmth spread through me. Maybe I would never have a clear answer. Maybe I would never know for sure if I had done the right thing. But I knew one thing. Since walking out of that party, I had slept better, felt lighter, and no longer felt the need to become someone I was not. So, what had I really lost? I set my mug down and reached for my phone. My voicemail was still full of missed calls from my father, from Margaret, from relatives I had never truly been close to. But I no longer felt pressured to respond. Then I put my phone down, stood up, and stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the crisp evening air. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if my father will keep trying to reach out or if he will finally accept that I have left his life. I don't know if I will ever regret my decision. But right now, I know that I have chosen myself. And maybe that's the most important thing. What do you think? Did I go too far, or was this something I should have done long ago? Lana's story is not just a personal tale. It's a reflection of so many people in real life who try to earn their family's approval, only to be met with indifference and rejection. Sometimes, letting go is not selfish. It's the only way to protect yourself from toxic relationships. Not everyone born into a family truly has a family in the meaningful sense. Most importantly, everyone has the right to choose their own happiness, even if that means walking away alone. What do you think about Lana's story? Did she go too far, or was this a decision she should have made long ago? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, life, and valuable lessons.